Waves roll in, endless and deep, carrying whispers from the ancient world. The sea has always spoken, though few truly listen. Before ships and maps, before compasses and charts, there was Poseidon. He ruled where no man could walk, where light fades and shadows reign. Some called him protector, watching over sailors with steady eyes. Others feared him as Floodbringer, shaking the earth with his trident. He was storm and silence, wrath and calm, chaos and gift. His throne lay hidden beneath coral halls and shining pearls. From there he listened, from there he struck, from there he blessed. Every tide that touched the shore carried his unseen hand. Every thunder over the horizon carried his voice. To mortals he was mystery, awe, and fear combined. The sea could cradle them home or sweep them away. Poseidon was not cruel, but he was never small. He demanded respect as wide as the waters themselves. Tonight, we journey into his realm, where myth meets wave. We uncover the Floodbringer, the creator, the challenger. We follow the tide of his stories across time. Listen closely now, for the ocean remembers, and Poseidon still waits beneath the waves. In the beginning, before the seas had a name, there was a child hidden from a father's hunger. Cronus devoured his children, fearing prophecy, fearing the day they might overthrow him. But not all would be lost, for Rhea, their mother, would not surrender every life to the void. She carried her infant son away, far from Cronus's reach, and far from his devouring shadow. This child was Poseidon, destined for the waves, though he did not yet know his fate. He was hidden deep, in a place where earth met sea, cradled in the rhythm of tides. The world around him echoed with water, soft and steady, teaching him its secret pulse. It was not silence he grew in, but a lullaby of waves against ancient stone. Rhea's choice was not only protection, but a promise that her son would endure. Like the sea itself, Poseidon was vast before he even knew himself. His youth was veiled in mystery, but his essence was already tied to the deep. When the day came, he would rise, no longer the child hidden, but the god revealed. The great war of gods and titans shook heaven and earth, storm against storm. Poseidon stood with his brothers and sisters, wielding courage instead of fear. From the hands of the Cyclopes, the ancient smiths, he received a weapon unlike any other. A trident of power, shining, unbreakable, forged in the fire of creation itself. It was not just a spear, not only a tool, but a symbol of what he would become. With it, he commanded seas, summoned storms, and broke the will of the earth beneath. The trident was his voice, his hand, his bond with the waters of the world. When raised, mountains shook and oceans roared in endless reply. But when lowered, calm spread and rivers ran gentle through the land. This was the duality of Poseidon, destroyer and creator, breaker and giver. With Zeus ruling the sky and Hades ruling the underworld, Poseidon took the sea. No less vast than the heavens, no less eternal than the underworld, it became his throne. Beneath waves and foam, he carved his palace of coral, silver, and pearl. There, in halls lit by shifting light, the sea god claimed his crown. Yet he was not distant, nor absent from mortal sight. Every sailor who set out felt his unseen gaze. Every fisherman who cast nets prayed for his favor. They knew the child once hidden now ruled the endless horizon. The sea was no longer chaos, but a kingdom shaped by will. Yet it could never be tamed. For Poseidon himself was not a tame god. He was a force, a presence, a truth as old as the tides. He did not seek to be gentle, nor did he hunger to be cruel. He was balance, and the sea was his eternal mirror. From the cradle of secrecy to the throne of waves, his story unfolded. The boy hidden in fear became the Floodbringer, the Earthshaker, the Lord of the Deep. And with each tide, his power grew, reaching shore after shore. Thus begins the tale of Poseidon, the child spared, the god revealed. A tale of the sea itself, restless, unending, and alive. In the age when gods claimed their symbols, Poseidon's fate was sealed by fire and forge. The Cyclopes, freed from their chains, became allies to the children of Rhea. They shaped gifts for the gods, weapons that would define their eternal power. For Zeus, they made thunderbolts, bright and fierce, sharp as lightning in the night. For Hades, they forged a helmet of darkness, unseen and feared in equal measure. And for Poseidon, they lifted iron and flame, crafting something unique and divine. The trident was born, gleaming with the shimmer of oceans, yet unnamed. Its prongs pierced the air, echoing the roar of waves against rocky cliffs. The Cyclopes blessed it with the strength to command the waters of the world. It was more than metal, more than a weapon. It was a bond to the sea itself. When Poseidon first held it, the waters stirred, recognizing their master. The oceans bent in silence, then roared, celebrating the birth of their lord. With a single strike, Poseidon could summon storms that shook the earth. With a gentle touch, he could call forth springs, flowing with life for mortals. The trident became the key to his dual nature, both fury and blessing. Mortals would one day see floods rise at its command, drowning arrogance. Yet they would also drink from the wells it created, saved by his mercy. This was the paradox of Poseidon, captured in the steel of three prongs. He was feared as the Earthshaker, for the ground trembled when he struck. But he was honored as the giver of horses, swift as wind upon waves. In its gleam, he saw not only power, but responsibility vast as the ocean. For the sea was not his to own, but his to rule with balance and strength. He carried the trident as a scepter, as kings bore crowns, as priests bore truth, and with it, he claimed his throne beneath the shifting waters of the world. Legends tell of the first time he tested its boundless might. With one motion, he split rock, releasing a spring that flowed forever. Clear water sparkled where once there had been only barren earth. Mortals drank, gave thanks, and carved his name into memory. But when his anger rose, the same trident summoned waves like mountains. Ships were swallowed, harbors broken, and shores reshaped in a single night. Those who forgot respect learned quickly that the sea demanded it. Poseidon was not cruel, but he was just, and his justice echoed in the tide. The trident shone brighter than the crowns of kings, brighter than the swords of heroes. For it was not bound by land or time, but by the rhythm of waves eternal. It reminded mortals that the sea gives and takes, without favor or grudge. And it reminded gods that Poseidon's reach was as endless as the horizon. In myths, the trident is always present, silent witness to his will. It stands in paintings, carvings, and stories, forever tied to the god of waters. For when we think of Poseidon, we see not just the man, but the weapon he bore. Yet in truth, it was more than a weapon. It was the voice of the sea. Through it, Poseidon spoke, in thunder, in flood, in springs, and in silence. The Cyclopes gave him metal, but the oceans gave him power. Together, they created a symbol that outlived empires and kings. So the trident remains, gleaming, remembered, as eternal as the waves it commands. After the war of gods and titans, the world was divided by power and fate. Zeus claimed the sky, bright and vast, where thunder ruled and lightning spoke. Hades descended below, into the shadowed halls where silence reigned forever. And Poseidon turned his gaze toward the endless horizon, the sea without end. The ocean stretched wider than land, deeper than mountains, older than memory. It called to him as if it had always been waiting for his hand. No throne of gold could compare to its restless beauty and mystery. With trident in hand, Poseidon claimed the waters as his eternal kingdom. Beneath the shifting waves, he built his palace of coral and pearl. Its walls glimmered with seashells, its halls lit by the glow of fish and flame. Columns of marble rose from the ocean floor, carved by currents and time. There, Poseidon sat, crowned by kelp and foam, lord of the deep. His court gathered around him, nereids, sea nymphs, and creatures of tide. Dolphins leapt through silver halls, and horses stamped waves into thunder. Mermaids sang in voices that carried like wind across a calm sea. Every corridor echoed with the pulse of water, steady and alive. This was not a kingdom of silence, but one of endless song. The sea itself became his temple, boundless and ever-shifting in its design. When storms raged above, the palace shook but did not fall. When calm returned, it shone brighter than gems hidden on land. Poseidon's reign was not like Zeus with thunder or Hades with shadow. His rule was balance, both fierce and gentle, both storm and stillness. He was closer to mortals than many gods, for the sea touched every shore. Fishermen prayed before sailing, whispering words into waves as offerings. Sailors carved his symbol onto ships, hoping for calm winds and safe return. Even farmers far inland honored him, for rivers and springs answered his call. His power was not confined to ocean, but reached into streams and fountains. Every drop of water, fresh or salt, sang with his hidden voice. Mortals saw him as both protector and punisher, never knowing which face would appear. To the humble, he gave abundance, fish leaping, nets filled, voyages swift. To the arrogant, he sent storms, waves rising high as mountains in anger. Thus his reputation spread, wide as the sea itself, shaping tales across ages. He was the Floodbringer, yet also the giver of life in every sip of water. His palace beneath the waves became a symbol of power unseen, yet felt. No mortal could walk its halls, yet all were touched by its presence. Legend said pearls within shone like captured stars, glowing forever in the dark. Coral grew in shapes that mirrored the heavens, a reflection of skies below. Every stone, every jewel was placed by currents, sculpted by Poseidon's will. In that kingdom, time flowed differently, as slow as tides on eternal shores. The palace was not built for conquest, but for harmony with the sea. It rose and fell with the waves, alive, shifting, yet eternal in design. Poseidon's throne stood at its heart, carved from a single block of stone. Upon it, he sat, trident at his side, as tides bowed in reverence. The sea was not conquered by him, but united with him. He was no stranger to its storms, for they mirrored his own spirit. He ruled not by chains, but by harmony, a dance between God and water. And so the sea became his realm, a kingdom vast beyond measure. Mortals saw only its surface, but Poseidon knew every depth and secret. To follow him was to follow the tide, unending, unbroken, alive. Thus he became the lord of the ocean, eternal as the waves themselves. After the war of gods and titans, the world was divided by power and fate. Zeus claimed the sky, bright and vast, where thunder ruled and lightning spoke. Hades descended below, into the shadowed halls where silence reigned forever. And Poseidon turned his gaze toward the endless horizon, the sea without end. The ocean stretched wider than land, deeper than mountains, older than memory. It called to him as if it had always been waiting for his hand. No throne of gold could compare to its restless beauty and mystery. With trident in hand, Poseidon claimed the waters as his eternal kingdom. Beneath the shifting waves, he built his palace of coral and pearl. Its walls glimmered with seashells, its halls lit by the glow of fish and flame. Columns of marble rose from the ocean floor, carved by currents and time. There, Poseidon sat, crowned by kelp and foam, lord of the deep. His court gathered around him, Nereids, sea nymphs, and creatures of tide. Dolphins leapt through silver halls, and horses stamped waves into thunder. Mermaids sang in voices that carried like wind across a calm sea. Every corridor echoed with the pulse of water, steady and alive. This was not a kingdom of silence, but one of endless song. The sea itself became his temple, boundless and ever-shifting in its design. When storms raged above, the palace shook but did not fall. When calm returned, it shone brighter than gems hidden on land. Poseidon's reign was not like Zeus with thunder or Hades with shadow. His rule was balance, both fierce and gentle, both storm and stillness. He was closer to mortals than many gods, for the sea touched every shore. Fishermen prayed before sailing, whispering words into waves as offerings. Sailors carved his symbol onto ships, hoping for calm winds and safe return. Even farmers far inland honored him, for rivers and springs answered his call. His power was not confined to ocean, but reached into streams and fountains. Every drop of water, fresh or salt, sang with his hidden voice. Mortals saw him as both protector and punisher, never knowing which face would appear. To the humble, he gave abundance, fish leaping, nets filled, voyages swift. To the arrogant, he sent storms, waves rising high as mountains in anger. Thus his reputation spread, wide as the sea itself, shaping tales across ages. He was the floodbringer, yet also the giver of life in every sip of water. His palace beneath the waves became a symbol of power unseen yet felt. No mortal could walk its halls, yet all were touched by its presence. Legend said pearls within shone like captured stars, glowing forever in the dark. Coral grew in shapes that mirrored the heavens, a reflection of skies below. Every stone, every jewel was placed by currents, sculpted by Poseidon's will. In that kingdom, time flowed differently, as slow as tides on eternal shores. The palace was not built for conquest, but for harmony with the sea. It rose and fell with the waves, alive, shifting, yet eternal in design. Poseidon's throne stood at its heart, carved from a single block of stone. Upon it he sat trident at his side, as tides bowed in reverence. The sea was not conquered by him, but united with him. He was no stranger to its storms, for they mirrored his own spirit. He ruled not by chains, but by harmony, a dance between God and water. And so the sea became his realm, a kingdom vast beyond measure. Mortals saw only its surface, but Poseidon knew every depth and secret. To follow him was to follow the tide, unending, unbroken, alive. Thus he became the lord of the ocean, eternal as the waves themselves. The city of Athens was young, its stones unmarked by time, its people seeking a divine guardian. The gods watched with interest, each wishing to claim the land as their own. Upon the hill that would one day be called the Acropolis, a contest was declared. Two mighty deities stepped forward, Athena of wisdom and Poseidon of the sea. The people gathered, their voices hushed, for the choice would shape their destiny. Zeus himself decreed that each god would offer a gift, and mortals would decide. Poseidon, tall and fierce, struck the ground with his shining trident. The earth cracked, and from the stone rose a fountain of water. It gushed with power, sparkling in the light, roaring like the sea. The crowd marveled at the miracle, awed by the strength of the sea god. But when they tasted it, the water was salt, briny, and bitter. Poseidon raised his trident high, his voice thundering like distant waves. "See this gift," he declared, "the strength of the sea, the might of oceans. To sail the world, to conquer coasts, to command the endless waters." The people admired his power, but questions stirred in their hearts. Would salt water feed their children, or bring them lasting peace? Then Athena stepped forward, calm, her eyes bright with wisdom. She knelt and touched the soil, planting her hand into the earth. From that touch, a slender tree grew, green and alive. Its branches stretched toward the sky, its leaves shining like silver. The olive tree was born, rooted deeply in the rocky ground. Athena spoke gently, her words carrying like a breeze over hills. "This tree will give you fruit to eat, oil for light, and wood for warmth. It will endure storms, endure war, endure time itself." The people looked to the tree, then to the spring, and weighed their choice. Power and conquest stood against wisdom and sustenance. The silence grew heavy, like waves holding their breath. At last, they chose Athena, for her gift promised life, not just strength. The city took her name, Athens, and the olive tree its emblem. Poseidon's face darkened, his pride wounded like a storm denied. The sea roared in answer, waves crashing against distant shores. Yet he did not destroy the city, for even gods must honor fate. Instead, he turned his wrath into a reminder, flooding lowlands nearby. The people learned to respect his temper, even as they loved Athena. This contest became legend, told for centuries beneath the olive branches. It was not a tale of loss, but of balance between gods. For Poseidon showed the might of oceans, the call of distant horizons. Athena gave wisdom, a gift that rooted life and peace. Together, their contest revealed the choice every people must make. Do we seek power without measure, or wisdom that endures the ages? Athens answered with the olive, but never forgot the sea. Ships would one day sail from its harbors, carrying olive oil across the world. And every voyage began with prayers to Poseidon, Lord of waters. Though he lost the contest, he remained present in every tide. The sea was still his, eternal and untamed, touching every shore. Athens grew under Athena's guidance, but Poseidon's shadow lingered. The salt spring on the Acropolis stayed as proof of his strike. Even today, legend says you can hear the sea in that stone. It whispers of the contest, of power and wisdom entwined. Thus the tale endures, teaching that even gods may be opposed, and that mortals, in their choices, shape the destiny of cities. Poseidon walked away from Athens, but not from the hearts of men. For who can live without the sea or without wisdom's light? The city of Athens was young, its stones unmarked by time, its people seeking a divine guardian. The gods watched with interest, each wishing to claim the land as their own. Upon the hill that would one day be called the Acropolis, a contest was declared. Two mighty deities stepped forward, Athena of wisdom and Poseidon of the sea. The people gathered, their voices hushed, for the choice would shape their destiny. Zeus himself decreed that each god would offer a gift, and mortals would decide. Poseidon, tall and fierce, struck the ground with his shining trident. The earth cracked, and from the stone rose a fountain of water. It gushed with power, sparkling in the light, roaring like the sea. The crowd marveled at the miracle, awed by the strength of the sea god. But when they tasted it, the water was salt and briny and bitter. Poseidon raised his trident high, his voice thundering like distant waves. "See this gift," he declared, "the strength of the sea, the might of oceans. To sail the world, to conquer coasts, to command the endless waters." The people admired his power, but questions stirred in their hearts. Would salt water feed their children or bring them lasting peace? Then Athena stepped forward, calm, her eyes bright with wisdom. She knelt and touched the soil, planting her hand into the earth. From that touch, a slender tree grew, green and alive. Its branches stretched toward the sky, its leaves shining like silver. The olive tree was born, rooted deeply in the rocky ground. Athena spoke gently, her words carrying like a breeze over hills. "This tree will give you fruit to eat, oil for light, and wood for warmth. It will endure storms, endure war, endure time itself." The people looked to the tree, then to the spring, and weighed their choice. Power and conquest stood against wisdom and sustenance. The silence grew heavy, like waves holding their breath. At last they chose Athena, for her gift promised life, not just strength. The city took her name, Athens, and the olive tree its emblem. Poseidon's face darkened, his pride wounded like a storm denied. The sea roared in answer, waves crashing against distant shores. Yet he did not destroy the city, for even gods must honor fate. Instead, he turned his wrath into a reminder, flooding lowlands nearby. The people learned to respect his temper, even as they loved Athena. This contest became legend, told for centuries beneath the olive branches. It was not a tale of loss, but of balance between gods. For Poseidon showed the might of oceans, the call of distant horizons. Athena gave wisdom, a gift that rooted life and peace. Together, their contest revealed the choice every people must make. Do we seek power without measure, or wisdom that endures the ages? Athens answered with the olive, but never forgot the sea. Ships would one day sail from its harbors, carrying olive oil across the world. And every voyage began with prayers to Poseidon, Lord of waters. Though he lost the contest, he remained present in every tide. The sea was still his, eternal and untamed, touching every shore. Athens grew under Athena's guidance, but Poseidon's shadow lingered. The salt spring on the Acropolis stayed as proof of his strike. Even today, legend says you can hear the sea in that stone. It whispers of the contest, of power and wisdom entwined. Thus the tale endures, teaching that even gods may be opposed, and that mortals in their choices shape the destiny of cities. Poseidon walked away from Athens, but not from the hearts of men. For who can live without the sea or without wisdom's light? The island of Atlantis shimmered in the ancient seas, a jewel of splendor and mystery. Legends say it was born from divine hands, a gift from Poseidon to his mortal love. He found Cleito, a woman of beauty and grace, dwelling upon a lonely hill. To protect her, Poseidon encircled the land with rings of water and earth. Bridges of stone connected the circles, guarded by shining gates and towers. At the center rose a palace, grander than any mortal hand could build. Walls of red, black, and white stone glimmered, polished by sea breezes. Inside, fountains gushed with fresh and salt water side by side. Gardens bloomed with fruits unknown to the wider world, nourished by rich soil. Gold and silver gleamed, reflecting the light of sun and stars. Atlantean ships sailed far, bringing back wonders from distant shores. Its people grew wise, skilled in crafts, builders of temples and harbors. At the heart stood Poseidon's temple, vast and shining with ivory. Within stood a statue of the sea god, driving 6 winged horses. Offerings filled the temple, treasures, animals, and songs of praise. The Atlanteans thrived, blessed by the favor of their divine father. For generations, they honored him, living with justice and harmony. But time has ways of testing even the greatest of cities. Wealth turned to pride, and pride into hunger for more. The Atlanteans longed to rule beyond their seas, to stretch across the world. Their ships carried warriors instead of traders, and greed shadowed their gifts. Poseidon watched, silent at first, as mortals strayed from his ways. The temple grew rich in gold, but poor in spirit and devotion. Justice faltered, and arrogance replaced gratitude in their hearts. The gods convened to judge Atlantis, seated high upon Olympus. Zeus spoke, his voice echoing like thunder over the clouds. He declared that hubris must meet its end, balance must return. What happened next was told in whispers, passed as warning. Storms gathered over Atlantis, waves rose higher than its towers. The sea trembled with power, as if Poseidon himself wept. Lightning split the sky, fire mingling with the fury of oceans. The proud island, once shining, sank into the deep abyss. Some say it was punishment, others a sorrowful act of mercy. For Poseidon loved Atlantis, yet could not protect it from decay. The island vanished, but the legend endured across time. Sailors swore they saw ruins beneath waves, marble columns glinting. Fishermen spoke of strange echoes rising from the ocean floor. Dreamers told of a city waiting, asleep beneath the sea. Atlantis became a symbol of glory and downfall, of blessing and curse. It taught that gifts of gods must be cherished, not consumed by pride. Even Poseidon's love could not shield mortals from their own folly. Yet in every tale, there was also memory of beauty, of gardens that bloomed eternal, of palaces kissed by starlight, of a people who once walked with gods before losing their way. Atlantis lives on, not in stone, but in the minds of all who tell the story. A reminder that seas can give, but also reclaim. That greatness demands humility, or else it sinks beneath the waves. And so the Floodbringer's name was forever tied to the lost island. Poseidon, god of oceans, keeper of mysteries, lord of Atlantis. The sea is never silent. Waves whisper, winds carry secrets. Beneath the surface, a story begins. Listen closely, for the ocean has a voice. It speaks of gods, storms, and timeless mysteries. Among them rises one name, deep as the abyss, vast as the horizon. Poseidon, lord of the sea. He is called the Earth Shaker, for the ground trembles at his command, mountains bend to his trident. He is known as the Floodbringer, for rivers swell, waves climb, and storms answer his restless spirit. Yet he is not only wrath. He is the giver of life, the guardian of sailors, and the father of horses. In every tide, his presence lingers. In every storm, his breath is felt. In every calm sea, his mercy rests. Tonight, we travel into his realm, a place where coral walls gleam, dolphins sing, and power flows. This is not the tale of a destroyer alone, but of balance and pride and the bond between gods and mortals. So close your eyes, hear the ocean's rhythm, and follow me into the deep. The journey of Poseidon begins. The story of Poseidon does not begin in calm waters. It begins in shadows, beneath the rule of Titans. Cronus, the father, feared his children. He swallowed each child at birth, hiding them in darkness. But Rhea, the mother, could not surrender all. Her heart longed to protect at least one son. When now Poseidon was born, She wrapped a stone in cloth and gave it to Cronus instead. Cronus devoured the stone, never knowing his son had been carried away to safety. Rhea placed Poseidon in the care of sea nymphs, who raised him far from his father's hunger. In caverns beneath the waves, the child learned the rhythm of the ocean, the strength of tides. The sea rocked him like a cradle. The currents whispered secrets of power and patience. Fish swam around his cradle of coral. Dolphins leapt above him, playful guardians of his infancy. The nymphs taught him to hear the voice of waves. He learned that the sea was never silent. Even as a child, he felt the pulse of storms. Lightning thrilled him. Thunder became a friend. His laughter echoed in watery halls. His tears made the currents surge with restless force. The ocean knew him. It shaped him. It marked him as its destined master. Above, Cronus ruled with fear. Below, Poseidon grew stronger, shielded by the embrace of water. Time passed. Poseidon was no longer a child. His gaze carried the horizon. His heart carried fire. When he struck the water, waves rose. When he whispered, the seas obeyed. The trident awaited him. But the trident was not yet his. It would come later, with war, with destiny, with the fall of titans. For now he listened. He learned patience, for the sea had taught him that all things flow in time. The nymphs spoke of his siblings, trapped in darkness within their father's belly. They spoke of Zeus, hidden on a mountain, destined to rise against Cronus. They spoke of Hades, of Hera, of Demeter, of Hestia, each one waiting for freedom. Poseidon felt their absence. Though he had never seen them, the bond of blood called to him. At night, he dreamed of breaking chains. He dreamed of lifting them from the shadows. But he also dreamed of the sea, of coral palaces, of endless horizons, of power unclaimed. Every drop of water sang to him. Every wave bent toward him. Every storm carried his name. Still, he was patient. The ocean whispered, "Wait. The time will come. The tide always turns." One day the nymphs told him his brother Zeus would come. Together they would face Cronus. And when that day came, Poseidon would rise from the sea, no longer a hidden child. He would rise as a god, with storms at his back, with the ocean at his feet. He would rise as the Floodbringer, the earth shaker, the one who commands the tides. But for now, he remained beneath the waves, growing, learning, becoming. The sea was both cradle and teacher. It was his shelter, his temple, his destiny. In the silence of the deep, Poseidon waited. In the silence, he prepared for the world above. The story of his beginning is not one of battle, but of survival, of patience, of waiting. It is the story of a child saved by the sea, destined to become its eternal lord. This was the birth of Poseidon, the hidden sun, the sea-born god, the Floodbringer yet to rise. The sea kept Poseidon hidden, but destiny could not keep him apart from his siblings forever. Far above, Cronus ruled in fear, yet whispers of rebellion stirred in caves, forests, and secret mountains. Zeus, the youngest son, had grown in hiding, nursed by the goat Amalthea on Mount Ida. He carried within him fire and thunder. His will was iron, his purpose unshakable, his heart set on freedom. When Zeus reached his strength, he sought allies. He searched for those who shared his hunger for justice. He found his siblings trapped inside Cronus, their voices muffled in a prison of darkness. But he also sought Poseidon, the brother raised by waves, who had never known chains. The meeting of the brothers was fated. Zeus climbed cliffs and called upon the sea with thunder. Poseidon rose from the waves, crowned with foam, his eyes shining with the depth of oceans. The brothers recognized each other at once. No words were needed. Blood speaks louder than silence. Zeus shared his vision. The time had come to rise against Cronus and end the reign of fear. Poseidon listened. He had waited his entire life for the tide to turn. The ocean within him stirred. Together, they traveled to hidden places where ancient beings awaited, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires. The Cyclopes had been imprisoned by Cronus long ago, their forges silenced, their power suppressed. Zeus broke their chains. Poseidon watched as flames lit the caverns, bright as a new dawn. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged gifts, weapons shaped from the essence of nature's force. For Zeus, they made the thunderbolt, fire captured in lightning, a weapon of storms. For Hades, they crafted the helmet of invisibility, shadow woven into unbreakable power. For Poseidon, they forged the trident, carved from the bones of the earth and the soul of the sea. When Poseidon took the trident, the ocean answered. Waves surged, storms awoke, the ground trembled. The sea became his voice, the earth his echo, the storm his companion. He was complete. Side by side, the brothers stood. Zeus with thunder, Hades with shadow, Poseidon with the endless tide. The balance of power had shifted. No longer were they children hiding from a devouring father. They were gods, armed with the forces of creation, ready to shape the world anew. Poseidon felt the weight of his destiny. The ocean roared through him, but so did the bond of family. He knew that their unity was their strength. Alone, each might falter. Together, they could shake eternity. The nymphs whispered that the sea itself rejoiced. Dolphins leapt, waves sang, winds carried omens of change. The earth quivered, sensing the coming storm. Even Cronus felt unease, though he cloaked it in pride. The children of Cronus had risen. The age of Titans trembled. The tide had turned. Poseidon looked at his trident, glowing with sea fire. He was no longer the hidden child of Rhea. He was the earth shaker, the Floodbringer, brother of thunder and shadow, warrior of the tide. The world was about to change forever, and Poseidon stood at the heart of that storm. This was the rise of the Olympians, the gathering of power that would echo through eternity. When the Titans fell, silence lingered over the world. The old order had ended, a new dawn began. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades stood victorious. The chains of fear were broken, the throne of Cronus destroyed. The earth was scarred, the sky cleared, the sea shimmered with restless power, waiting to be claimed. But now a question rose among the brothers. Who would rule what? How would they divide eternity? The cosmos was vast, and no single god could bear its weight. They turned to chance for judgment. They cast lots, each brother placing his fate in the hand of destiny, not pride or sword. Zeus drew the skies, where clouds gather and lightning reigns. His throne was the vault of heaven. Hades drew the underworld, the shadowed realm of the dead, where silence and mystery hold dominion. Poseidon drew the sea, the endless expanse of waves, depths, and storms, boundless as his own spirit. He accepted it not as burden, but as birthright. The ocean had always been his cradle, his home. He looked upon the waters, shimmering with sun, roaring with thunder, glowing with secrets unknown. The sea was alive, breathing, eternal, a force no mortal nor god could ever truly tame. From that moment, Poseidon's dominion stretched across every tide, every storm, every coastline touched by waves. His trident struck the surf, and the seas rose in salute. Dolphins leapt, whales sang, currents obeyed. The world trembled, for the earth-shaker had claimed his throne. His power was now fully awakened. Yet Poseidon knew this gift was not only might, but balance. Water nourishes, water destroys, water renews. Sailors would pray to him. Farmers would look to rains, cities would rise and fall by his will. No kingdom could ignore the sea, and no king could rule without Poseidon's favor. He built his palace deep beneath the waves, a fortress of coral, pearl, and shimmering stone. Its halls glowed with light, filtered through water. Its ceilings danced with ripples of the surface above. Sea nymphs sang in his courts. Dolphins played in fountains. Horses of foam galloped through the tide. This was no realm of silence, but of music, movement, and mystery, forever alive with ocean's soul. Yet Poseidon never forgot his brothers. Though realms were divided, the bond of victory bound them. Zeus ruled above, Hades below, Poseidon between, each a pillar holding the balance of creation. The division was not rivalry, but necessity. Each force had its place, each god his dominion. Poseidon's heart swelled with pride, but also with solemn duty. The sea was both gift and test. To command the ocean was to command life itself, and with it came endless responsibility. When storms rose, mortals cursed his name. When rains fell, they blessed him as a savior. Such was his dual nature. Giver and taker, protector and punisher, the balance of flood and calm. The brothers' choice that day shaped all ages to come. The world had been divided with wisdom. Zeus above, Hades below, Poseidon between, the three thrones carved the order of gods, eternal. Poseidon stood at the shore, gazing at the horizon. His eyes carried the weight of infinity. He was no longer hidden, no longer waiting. He was lord of oceans, keeper of storms, floodbringer. And so the sea had its master, and the tides their eternal voice, echoing forever in his name. The sea was now Poseidon's realm, yet his power did not end with the waves and tides. He was more than lord of waters. He was the earthshaker, the god whose trident shook the land itself. When he struck the ground, mountains trembled, valleys cracked, and cities felt the rumble beneath their feet. The power of the sea and the earth were bound together in his hand, vast and unyielding. Mortals feared storms, but they feared earthquakes more. For the ground itself betrayed them without warning. They said it was Poseidon's anger that split cliffs, toppled walls, and shifted the foundations of the earth. Yet it was not always anger. Sometimes the shaking came as a reminder, a whisper of his presence. The trident was more than a weapon. It was a key, unlocking both sea and soil, shaping the world. With one strike, he could raise new springs, filling dry lands with fresh water for farmers and herders. With another, he could summon floods, sweeping through valleys to cleanse and renew the earth. The duality of Poseidon was clear. He was not destruction alone. He was creation, balance, and renewal. Mortals built temples by the shore and deep inland, hoping to appease both sea and ground. Fishermen offered prayers for calm waters. Farmers begged for rains, not floods. Cities prayed for steady earth. In every prayer, there was awe and fear, for Poseidon's moods shaped their very survival. The sea reflected his spirit. When calm, it was gentle and merciful. When stirred, it was fierce and wild. So too was the earth beneath their feet, steady one moment, trembling the next, echoing his restless soul. Legends told that Poseidon's steps shook the world, each stride marking valleys, rivers, and trembling coasts. He was a god of movement, never still, never bound. Like water, like quakes, he flowed and surged. Even the gods respected his reach. For while Zeus ruled the sky, Poseidon touched both land and sea. His brothers understood. They ruled their realms, but Poseidon's domain crossed boundaries, shaping both above and below. Mortals saw him as unpredictable, yet the wise knew he acted with purpose, not mere impulse. The earth needed quakes to breathe, rivers needed floods to renew, seas needed storms to remain alive. Poseidon was the reminder that change is eternal, that stability is only a moment between movements. He carried the ocean's voice in his heart, but also the deep rumble of the earth's core. When sailors felt sudden storms, they called to him. When farmers saw wells rise, they praised his hand. When the earth trembled, they fell silent, listening for the will of the earth shaker in every sound. Poseidon himself knew his role was both feared and sacred. He bore it with pride and solemnity. For to be lord of seas and quakes was to be master of balance, not chaos. He was the reminder that life is fragile, and yet always renewed by the cycles of nature. Thus his trident was not only a weapon of war, but a symbol of transformation and divine order. Poseidon's legacy as Earthshaker grew with each tremor, each storm, each wave upon the shore. His name became eternal in the voices of the oceans and the shaking of the ground. And wherever the earth quivered or the sea surged, mortals whispered his name with reverence and fear. For Poseidon was not only the Floodbringer, but the Earthshaker, lord of shifting lands and endless tides. Poseidon's realm was vast, yet not without challenge, for even a god faced struggles in shaping his destiny. The sea obeyed him, but its endless depths hid secrets, mysteries that even he approached with caution. In the darkest trenches, beyond mortal sight, dwelled ancient beings older than Olympus itself. Some whispered that the sea's first voices still lingered there, powerful, patient, and waiting. Poseidon knew the ocean was not only his kingdom, but also a living memory of creation. Each wave carried echoes of time, from the birth of the world to the rise of mortals. When storms raged, it was not always anger, but sometimes remembrance, the sea speaking through its master. Poseidon often walked the shores of distant lands, gazing at the horizon, thoughtful and watchful. He was not only a god of force, but also of deep reflection, tied to the rhythm of waters. As Earthshaker, he shaped lands, but as Sea Lord, he preserved balance, guarding both chaos and calm. Mortals believed him untouchable, but in truth, Poseidon bore burdens known only to gods. He carried the weight of oceans, the tremor of the earth, and the silence of the deep. It was a crown heavy with both majesty and sorrow, for power always demanded balance. His trident gleamed like lightning, yet it was not always raised in fury, but often in care. With it, he carved rivers, opened springs, and guided sailors safely to their harbors. Many songs honored his kindness, though more often people remembered the storms. It is human nature to fear. Yet Poseidon's story was never only about wrath. He loved creation, the creatures of the sea, the coral gardens, the dolphins that leapt with joy. He listened to the calls of whales, guardians of songs that traveled across oceans. In their voices, he heard harmony, a reminder that power could be gentle, not only fierce. There were moments when Poseidon lingered in silence, watching the stars reflect upon calm seas, wondered if mortals understood that the ocean's peace was his gift as much as the rain. For storms were warnings, not punishments. For quakes were awakenings, not only terrors. His hand guided them with reason, though mortals often saw only the fearsome side of his will. Still, he accepted their prayers, their offerings, their temples of stone by rocky coasts. Every flame lit for him carried gratitude, even when mixed with trembling fear. Poseidon's role was eternal, yet he too searched for meaning in the cycles of his domain. Why should the sea always roar? Why should the earth always quake? Perhaps, he thought, the answer lay in balance, the eternal rhythm that life must follow. The gods ruled different realms, yet their tasks were bound together like threads of a great tapestry. Poseidon's thread was motion, never still, always changing, always flowing. Through him, mortals learned to adapt, to bend like reeds against winds, to endure and rise again. And though they feared him, deep within their hearts, they also loved him. For without him, life could not be. Thus, Poseidon endured his burdens with pride, knowing that both fear and love shaped his divinity. He was not only the Floodbringer, nor only the Earthshaker, but the guardian of cycles eternal. And in every wave that touched the shore, his presence lived, eternal, vast, and unbroken. Poseidon's power stretched far, yet it was not endless, for even gods shared their strength with fate itself. The fates wove threads that even he could not sever, and Poseidon knew his place within their loom. Still, he shaped the seas and the trembling earth, leaving marks that no time could erase. His temples rose along rocky cliffs, their marble columns gleaming against the blue horizon. Priests tended sacred fires there, their chants mingling with the crashing of the waves below. Offerings of salt, shells, and crafted tridents lay at the altar, gifts to honor the Sea Lord. Fishermen whispered prayers before casting nets, asking Poseidon for mercy and safe return. Sailors carved his symbol on their ships, believing his eye would guide them through storms. Children of coastal towns grew up with stories of his blessings, his wrath, and his hidden kindness. One tale spoke of a small village that suffered drought for many moons, fields dry and lifeless. The people prayed with empty hands, for they had nothing left to offer but their voices. Moved by their devotion, Poseidon struck his trident into the parched earth. From the crack, a spring burst forth, pure and endless, quenching both soil and spirit. The villagers rejoiced, calling him not destroyer, but savior, their gratitude eternal. Such stories spread across lands, reminding mortals that gods were not only fearsome, but also generous. Yet balance was always present, for where kindness flowed, warning soon followed. Another village ignored the sea, taking its bounty without prayer or thanks. When storms came, they cursed Poseidon, blaming him for their losses. But the sea listens, and the god listens, and neither forgets words spoken in arrogance. The waves grew stronger, the winds colder, until the village remembered humility. Only then, when offerings were made with true respect, did the waters calm once more. Mortals learned that Poseidon's gifts came not from demand, but from harmony and reverence. He was a god of cycles, returning balance where pride or despair tilted the scales. Even other gods acknowledged his role, though at times it brought friction. Athena, wise and steady, often opposed him in contests of cities and land. Mortals chose between wisdom and the sea, between reason and the tides. Such rivalries reminded gods and humans alike that balance shaped destiny. Poseidon's heart, though vast, was not immune to envy or desire. He longed for recognition, for remembrance, for his place among eternal myths. But deep within, he knew that his true legacy lived not in temples or statues. It lived in the salt of the sea, in the rumble of the earth, in the prayers whispered at dawn. Every sailor who survived a storm, every farmer who drank from a spring, carried his presence within them. He did not need endless praise, for the world itself was his altar. And so, Poseidon watched over both silence and storm, always between creation and destruction. He was eternal motion, the heartbeat of oceans, the pulse beneath the soil. Through him, mortals were reminded of humility, of gratitude, and of the fragile gift of life. And though his power was vast, His greatest strength was balance, the truth that even gods honored. Poseidon's story was not only written in temples or whispered in coastal prayers, but carved into the world itself. Every island rising from the sea was said to be his gift, drawn upward by the touch of his trident. Where mortals saw chance, the wise saw intention, the god shaping lands with a gesture of his will. Volcanoes that burst from the ocean were called his forges, fire and water bound in restless union. The coastlines, jagged and curving, bore the marks of his artistry, endless patterns upon the earth. Yet his hand was not always steady, for creation itself demanded both gentleness and force. Mortals learned that islands could rise but also sink, swallowed by the tides without warning. Such changes reminded them of Poseidon's power, neither cruel nor kind, but eternal and vast. He was not bound to mortal time, yet he shaped their destinies with every shifting wave. His presence was strongest where sea and land embraced, in harbors, bays, and storm-worn cliffs. Travelers claimed they felt him in the salt wind, in the deep pull of the tides. To them, Poseidon was not distant, but close, woven into every journey and every horizon. Legends grew of his sea creatures, guardians and companions that carried his will across oceans. Dolphins guided lost sailors to safety, their leaps shining, like silver under the moonlight. Horses, his sacred animals, were said to rise from the foam of the sea itself. Their gallop echoed waves crashing, a reminder that power and beauty lived side by side. Whales sang his hymns in the deep, their voices carrying his memory farther than any temple bell. Even the smallest shell was said to hold his whisper, if mortals pressed it close to their ear. Children believed seashell songs were Poseidon's voice, calling them gently toward wonder, not fear. Such tales softened his image, painting him not only as Floodbringer, but also as guardian. He was both father of storms and protector of voyagers, both restless and compassionate. In every myth, his duality shone, the balance of chaos and mercy, of wrath and care. But Poseidon himself knew that mortals often saw only fragments of his truth. They prayed for calm seas, forgetting that storms gave strength and floods gave renewal. They feared the quake, forgetting it was the earth's breath, a rhythm beyond their sight. Poseidon's gift was not control, but motion, the lesson that all things must change to endure. Still, he listened to their songs, their cries, their offerings cast upon the waves. For though he was vast and eternal, he was never deaf to the voices of mortals. He had shaped them too, for without sea and soil, their lives would not flourish. And so he bore their fear and their love, their praise and their curses, in equal weight. In the silence of night, Poseidon sometimes lingered near the shore, unseen, unrecognized. He listened to the laughter of children, the whispers of lovers, the songs of fishermen. These moments reminded him why he continued, why balance mattered, why creation and change were sacred. For gods, like mortals, sought meaning in the endless tides of existence. And in Poseidon's heart, the sea's eternal motion was both his burden and his purpose. Thus, his story was not only of floods and quakes, but of islands, songs, and fleeting mortal prayers. And as waves broke upon the shore, his voice lived in their rhythm, eternal, vast, and near. Poseidon's domain was not only the sea and the trembling earth, but also the hearts of those who sailed. Mortals who braved the waves lived their lives in constant dialogue with the god of waters. Every voyage was a prayer, every harbor a gift, every safe return a sign of divine favor. Sailors told stories of seeing him in storms, a towering figure rising from foam and thunder. Some swore they glimpsed his trident glowing beneath the waves, guiding or warning with its silent light. Others claimed dolphins leapt beside their ships, messengers of Poseidon's protection across the deep. These tales were more than superstition. They were the rhythm of faith upon the waters. For to sail was to surrender, to place one's life in the hands of tide and wind. And in those forces, mortals felt Poseidon's breath, his will, his watchful and unpredictable spirit. There were stories of entire fleets spared by sudden calm, as if a mighty hand stilled the sea. There were also whispers of ships swallowed whole, reminders of the cost of pride or neglect. Sailors knew the sea was no place for arrogance, for Poseidon did not suffer fools lightly. Respect was the anchor of survival, humility the compass that pointed toward safe shores. And so, songs of Poseidon spread, carried by wind and water, shaping the culture of seafarers. In these songs, he was both feared and beloved, the eternal lord of horizons unknown. Children on the coast grew up hearing these hymns, their lullabies mingled with the crash of waves. They learned early that the sea was both friend and foe, a mirror of Poseidon's nature. To honor him was to honor life's uncertainty, the truth that nothing stayed still forever. Fishermen told their sons, "Cast your nets with care, for the sea feeds only the humble." Mothers whispered to daughters, "Pray for those at sea, for they walk in Poseidon's shadow." Thus, generation after generation carried reverence for the god, woven into their daily lives. But Poseidon was not only a figure of distance and mystery. He was a god of presence. Some legends claimed he walked among mortals in disguise, a traveler with salt upon his skin. He would share bread with fishermen, listen to their tales, and vanish like mist at dawn. Those who treated him with kindness found their nets full and journeys safe. Those who scorned the stranger often learned humility in harsher ways. Such tales reminded mortals that the divine was never far, always listening, always watching. And in truth, Poseidon cherished these moments, for they connected him to the lives he shaped. Though vast and eternal, he found meaning in the small gestures of gratitude and respect. A child's seashell offering, a sailor's whispered prayer, a farmer's thanks for water. These mattered. For gods, though mighty, drew strength from faith, from the bonds between divine and mortal. Poseidon carried these offerings like jewels, treasured in the depths of his heart. Not for power alone, but for the reminder that his dominion was also care. For every storm he brought, he also gave calm. For every quake, a spring of renewal. Thus, his story was not only of force, but of balance, the eternal rhythm of giving and taking. And in this balance, Poseidon found his place, eternal guardian of seas, of earth, and of mortal trust. For every prayer cast into the waves, he answered, not always as mortals wished, but always as needed. The sea is a realm of endless mystery, and Poseidon held the keys to its deepest secrets. Beneath the waves lay cities forgotten by time, their ruins guarded by silence and shadow. Legends whispered of Atlantis, the proud island blessed and cursed by the god of the sea. It was said to be a place of marvels, where towers gleamed and fountains sang with living water. Its people thrived on wisdom, art, and power, building wonders that rivaled the works of gods. But prosperity grew into pride, and pride into arrogance, until balance was lost. They believed themselves untouchable, rulers of sea and land, forgetting the humility Poseidon demanded. Their prayers grew fewer, their offerings shallow, their reverence fading like mist in sunlight. Poseidon watched, patient yet sorrowful, as the people strayed from gratitude into hubris. He had given them abundance, but abundance without respect becomes a burden to the earth. And so, the sea stirred, restless under the weight of neglect and arrogance. Storms raged, tides swelled, and the balance of the world began to tilt. Some say Poseidon warned them, whispering through tremors, guiding through signs unheeded. Others claim he simply waited, allowing their own folly to call forth the tide. When the fateful night came, the island shook with the voice of the earth itself. Mountains split, rivers roared backward, and the sea rose higher than ever before. Waves swallowed temples and gardens, statues crumbled, and pride dissolved into foam. The ocean claimed Atlantis, pulling it into the abyss, a city remembered only in story. Some say it sleeps still, deep beneath the waters, guarded by Poseidon's eternal watch. Others believe it transformed, not destroyed, becoming a realm of beauty hidden from mortal eyes. A city of coral and pearl, where voices echo like songs carried by the currents. Sailors swear they have glimpsed lights beneath the water, towers glowing faintly in the dark. Some even tell of meeting Atlanteans, transformed into beings of sea and spirit. Whether truth or dream, the tale of Atlantis endures, a mirror of human ambition. It speaks of the gifts of the gods and the peril of forgetting their source. For in Poseidon's world, nothing is truly lost, only changed, only returned to the deep. The story of Atlantis is not only about ruin, but about remembrance and respect. It teaches that blessings are fragile, that gratitude is the anchor of prosperity. And it reminds mortals that the sea, though bountiful, holds its own eternal law. Poseidon did not destroy out of cruelty, but out of balance, a truth woven into the tide. For as the waves rise, they also fall. And from endings, new beginnings are born. Atlantis became legend, but also warning, a voice echoing through generations. Every sailor who hears the sea's roar remembers that pride has a cost. Every village by the shore knows that the ocean's gifts must be honored. And every prayer cast into the waters carries with it the memory of Atlantis. Poseidon, in his vastness, held not only power, but sorrow for what was lost. He cherished creation, yet he could not let imbalance endure, for the world itself demanded harmony. Thus, Atlantis rests as both dream and lesson, a tale carried by wind and wave. And through it, Poseidon speaks still, reminding mortals of the fragile bond between earth, sea, and spirit. The ocean is not only water and salt, but also a vast library where time writes its secrets. Poseidon walked its depths like a king in endless halls, each current a corridor of memory. Here, every ripple held a story, every shell an echo, every stone a silent witness. The god listened to the songs of whales, whose voices carried wisdom older than nations. He touched corals that glowed with quiet fire, their colors shifting with the rhythm of the sea. Schools of fish moved like living constellations, stars drifting in liquid skies, guided by his hand. To mortals, the ocean was a mystery, but to Poseidon, it was a living archive. He remembered when the first sailors carved fragile rafts and braved the unknown horizon. He remembered their fear and courage, the way they trembled and prayed as waves rose. He remembered, too, the first temples built on shores, altars of stone kissed by spray. Every offering, every chant, every song of gratitude remained alive in his watery realm. Time in the sea was not like time on land. It bent, flowed, and circled endlessly. Ancient ships lay resting in the sand, their timbers whispering of voyages never completed. Some were honored by Poseidon, preserved as monuments, shining with pearls and guarded by dolphins. Others were left to sink into silence, reminders of hubris, swallowed by shadow and tide. In this way, the ocean became both grave and cradle, a place where endings birthed beginnings. Poseidon cherished this duality, for it mirrored his own nature, giver and taker, guardian and judge. Among his treasures were stories mortals could never hear, locked in the language of waves. Yet sometimes he shared them, revealing fragments in the crash of surf or lull of tide. A fisherman might dream of a lost city, hearing laughter in the current and mist. A sailor might feel a hand steady his boat, though no one stood beside him. Such moments were Poseidon's gifts, glimpses into mysteries far too vast to name. But not all secrets were gentle, for the ocean also remembered sorrow. It carried the tears of widows waiting on shore, the cries of sailors never returned. It bore the weight of wars fought upon its back, ships clashing while the sea endured. Poseidon felt these wounds deeply, for he was bound to both the storm and the calm. He knew that mortals often saw only his fury, forgetting his role as preserver of life. Without his waters, no seed would grow, no river would flow, no breath would last. Thus, he bore both love and misunderstanding, a god eternal yet deeply tied to mortal fate. And still, he chose to give. Forgiving was the essence of the sea itself. The tides rose and fell, never asking thanks, always offering rhythm to the world. The waves washed away footprints, carrying sorrow out, bringing renewal back again. Even the smallest shell cast upon the sand was part of his endless story. And Poseidon, walking the ocean's halls, carried all of it within his immortal heart. Every storm he summoned, every calm he granted, every secret he kept was part of balance. For the ocean was truth itself, boundless, shifting, merciful and fierce, always alive. And in that truth, Poseidon found not only power, but purpose. To be guardian of the sea was not simply to rule, it was to remember, to preserve. And so he continued, eternal and steadfast, the keeper of mysteries beneath the waves. The story of Poseidon is not only the tale of storms, but of the eternal balance of life. He was more than a god of waves. He was the guardian of cycles, endings, and beginnings. Every tide he commanded carried both destruction and renewal, a truth whispered through the ages. Mortals often prayed for calm seas, yet they also knew storms had their own purpose. For storms cleared old paths, reshaped coasts, and made way for new growth on the shore. In this way, Poseidon's might was never cruelty, but the hand of balance in motion. He was feared, yes, but fear was only half the story, for he was also loved. Sailors spoke of him as protector, fishermen as provider, farmers as the bringer of rain. Even children learned his name early, whispering it with awe when waves kissed their feet. Through him, mortals came to see the sea not as chaos, but as living order. The ocean's vastness reminded them of their smallness, yet also of their place in the world. And Poseidon, in turn, drew strength from their prayers, offerings, and whispered gratitude. Though immortal, he was bound to mortals by threads of faith, woven into every wave. Their songs echoed in his halls, their hopes carried in shells and drops of salt water. In this bond, Poseidon found purpose, and in purpose, he found peace beyond power. The myths tell us he was stern, but also generous, quick to anger, yet quicker to forgive. He did not demand perfection from mortals, only respect, humility, and remembrance of the sea. For in forgetting the sea, they would forget life itself, the rhythm that sustained them. And so his legacy became more than temples, more than tridents, more than trembling earth. It became a truth passed down in stories, fireside songs, and the endless voice of waves. Every time the ocean roared, mortals heard his name woven into the fabric of existence. And every calm tide was a reminder of his care, silent but ever present. Poseidon's story is not confined to myth, for even now, his lessons remain. The sea still teaches us humility, patience, reverence, and the cost of arrogance. It teaches that what is given must be honored, that blessings can vanish if ignored. And it reminds us that balance, though fragile, is the heartbeat of the world itself. Perhaps Poseidon still walks among us, cloaked in salt spray, a traveler by the shore. Perhaps he listens when a child casts a shell into the tide with a whispered wish. Perhaps he smiles when sailors look to the horizon with hope instead of fear. For the sea is never silent, and the God who rules it is never far. His trident still gleams in lightning, his voice still trembles in thunder, his breath in waves, and his heart, vast as the ocean itself, still beats with care for all creation. So when you hear the waves tonight, remember their rhythm is older than time itself. Remember that each tide is a story, each ripple a message, each storm a lesson. And remember that Poseidon, the Floodbringer, remains eternal, shaping both sea and soul. For as long as the ocean moves, his spirit endures, guardian of balance, lord of the deep.